Welcome to Small Business Saturday.
Welcome to Small Business Saturday's video series with your host and my husband.
And my dad, Aaron Montgomery.
Join the conversation.
Let's talk some business.
All right, welcome into Small Business Saturdays. My name is Aaron Montgomery, and my mission is to inspire you to love your business. And excited to talk to you guys today about rewriting your story. I know we had a little postponement here, and we've moved the live broadcast to a different time. So I appreciate those of you that are tuned in live here. Good morning, good morning, good morning. And okay, well, let's start off here. Right, I want to ask you guys a question. What if you had no fear, shame, or regret? Let me ask that one more time. What if you had no fear, shame, or regret? Right? Let that sink in for a little bit. In fact, let's do this. Depending on where you're tuning in from, if this is something that you can do, and I hope it is, but I want you to just take a moment and close your eyes right now. And I want you to visualize some stuff here with me real quick, right? So visualize this. So you got your eyes closed, visualize this. You have no fear, shame, or regret. It doesn't exist in you, right? In fact, let's take it a step further, and in your mind's eye, just act as if that were true, right? How would you be acting, right? Really visualize that reality and imagine how you will be acting now that you have no fear, shame, or regret, right? How are you going to act when it comes to your health and fitness and recreation, right? How will you be acting when it comes to your community, your friends, your family, when you have no fear, shame, or regret, right? How are you going to be acting when it comes to your partner and your spirituality, right? That part of your life, right? How will you be acting when it comes to your business, your finances, right? You have no fear, shame, or regret. So really visualize what that looks like in your mind's eye. Just take a moment and do that. Now keep visualizing. Again, you have no fear, shame, or regret. And what decisions would you make differently than you had before you found this new mindset, right? How would you show up in each of those areas we just talked about? What would you do differently than you did before? And just visualize that. All right, take a moment and think through that. All right. So from that space, right, I want you guys to come back and we'll check in here real quick. Good morning to you, Darren. Good morning, Kylene. And good morning to Facebook user here. Chuck, good morning to you. And thank you so much for tuning in here this morning. All right. So that visualization that we just did, that ability that we just gave ourselves to act from a place that doesn't have any fear, shame, or regret, right? That's an uncommon mindset. And my passion is to cultivate that in you so you can revolutionize your decision-making, right? I asked you, what decisions would you be making differently if you'd found that mindset, right? We want to liberate ourselves from limitations and ultimately just have a business that we truly love. So that's what we're going to talk about here today. How do we rewrite our story from that space of having no fear, shame, or regret? But before we do that, I want to share something with you guys real quick here, and then we'll come back and dig into that.
Are you feeling stuck in your journey? Have you made investments in programs or put time into your business and can't seem to get there fast enough? Don't go it alone. Take a look at Radical Goal Getters and unlock what you've been missing. Radical Goal Getters is a facilitated 6-month mastermind program designed by Success Principles trainers who have led masterminds for Mr. Jack Canfield. These cohorts are your ticket to success in just 6 months. It's not just another program or training class. It will become your success community. This specific proven concept is the support, accountability, and expert guidance you need to break through barriers. Visit radicalgoalgetters.com to learn more and apply for your life-changing opportunity. new mastermind groups are now forming. Imagine achieving your number one goal, being truly fulfilled, all while being surrounded by like-minded peers who cheer you on every step of the way. That's the Radical Goal Getters difference. All you have to do is apply at radicalgoalgetters.com today.
All right. Well, check that out and let me know if you have any questions about the Radical Goal Getters, and we can talk more about it. But I want to get back into this rewrite your story here, right? And here's why this can be so powerful for you. Hopefully you have experienced that, right? You took a moment, and if you haven't, that's okay. Come back and do that, and just again close your eyes and really visualize yourself. You know, you all of the ways that you would be acting if you were coming from a place of not having any fear, shame, or regret, right? And so from visualizing that, I want to talk about rewriting our story based on that feeling. And then I also we'll take, and because I want to tie this together for you, we're going to use this Small Business Saturdays presentations that I've been doing for about 213 episodes now as an example of ways that we can kind of rewrite things, right? And Small Business Saturday, this is something that I love dearly. I'm filled up by being able to share what I've learned. But rewriting your story sometimes means taking the blinders off, right? And seeing what is serving you and what is just, you know, let's be honest, what's just ego getting in the way, right? So rewriting our stories, a lot of times once we start doing that, we think, oh, well, I'm making this change. But what we don't realize is not only are we making a slight change, but we're potentially uncovering something better. So let's start here. Let's first look at the impact of these three areas on the creating of our stories, right? The fear, shame, and regret. So a couple of different, you know, fear can show up in a whole bunch of different ways. Shame can show up in a whole bunch of different ways. Regret can show up in a whole bunch of different ways. But I want to share with you guys a few examples, right? And these aren't all of them. These are just some of the examples that I was able to come up with here. And so let's start there, right? Because if we can't identify it, if we don't really understand what it is, then we can't overcome it. We can't start rewriting those stories. So the first big one, I think, and I think this is what happens for most of us, is the fear of failure shows up, right? We're afraid to put ourselves out there because we believe that we're going to fail and then be ridiculed or whatever the case may be, right? That pain that is associated sometimes with failure, right? And so we find any excuse why we can't. We've become really adept at finding all the reasons why we can't do something. And then we get into this, you know, oh, well, I'm only going to do it if you show me a sign, right? And then I'll take the risk, right? And what ends up happening is we just sit there in inaction, waiting for somebody else or something else to be the action taker for us. And as my friend Eric Campbell always says, he says, you can't park a steered, you can't park a steered car. How about the other way around? You can't steer a parked car, right? And so no action means no feedback, and no feedback means no progress. So fear keeps us stuck in park, right? So that might be one thing that could show up for us. The shame of seeking help, right? We might be needing help, right? Maybe we don't know something, maybe we're stuck somewhere and we're just trying to grit it out and figure it out on our own. And you know, especially small business owners, we are an independent lot, right? We want to do it on our own. We don't want to ask for help. We don't want to seek out any mentors or anything like that. And so maybe there's this fear of shame that comes along with, if I ask for help, you know, you maybe as a kid you were told, well, we'll just figure it out, right? Why can't you just figure things out, right? I've just was thinking through some of the times that I've told my son that, right? I'm like, oh boy, I'm building limiting beliefs for him, right? And that's the reality of it, though. It's not because I dislike my son. It's because I want him to have that go-getter mentality. But at the same time, right, how are we really helping? So somehow, some way, maybe we have that where we need to ask for guidance, right? Maybe that also then leads into some fear that we might look incompetent. And but in the reality, we probably need to seek out advice. We probably need to take some action and ask for help. And and put ourselves out there a little bit that way. So there's another one. And maybe there's some regret of missed opportunities, right? Maybe we're going to look at things and go, oh man, I've got to take every opportunity. I got to say yes to every job. And what can happen is it leads to overwhelm, and it leads to rushed decision making, not really slowing down and taking a moment to really go, you know what, is this really right for me? And then, we end up chasing opportunities that just don't align with who we are, what our goals are, what our purpose is, things like that, right? So there's a couple of examples. If you guys have some of your own examples of ways that fear, shame, or regret has shown up for you, I'm happy to work through those and talk through those a little bit. And here's the other part about this list, right? I've got 3 others that I want to go through here before we get into how we move past all this. Is these are all things that I've encountered, right? These are all the ways that not only were these ways that I thought, I've heard this and seen this, but these are all the ways that fear, shame, and regret has worked in my life too, right? And so it's okay. So the more we share, the more it's very cathartic, right? We can get it out there and go, oh, okay, I'm not the only one that's experiencing that, right? And maybe I am, and that's okay too, right? That's fine. All right, so we've got the fear of failure. We have the shame of seeking help. We've got the regret of missed opportunities. How about the fear of rejection, right? When I go and ask the customer for the orders and they say no, emotionally, that's going to hurt, right? Oh, they don't like me. It's personal, right? But the reality is that rejection is just that. That particular person, it was not right for them in that moment. And that could be from partners or from investors or from, whoever, right? I go and ask a mentor if they can help me. Oh, I can't right now, right? Oh, well, he just doesn't like me or she doesn't like me and they don't think that I'm good enough. And right. So that fear just comes and shows up. And what ends up happening is that happens to us once or twice. We get told no once or twice, and we stop making ourselves available. We stop putting ourselves out there and making those bold propositions that ultimately could really benefit our business, right? So there's another one. The next one, shame of financial struggle, right? As small business owners, we've put a lot of our heart and soul into this, and a lot of that heart and soul comes in the form of our checkbooks, right? I know for my family right now, we're looking at things going, man, we've things have got to start heading in the right direction here, right? And I'm somebody that's sitting here telling you how to build the foundation of your business, and yet, I'm struggling a little bit, but that's okay, right? Because we've got to figure things out, and we've got to make investments in things. And heck, at the same time, I've made some investments that just weren't really all that valuable. And looking back, but I wouldn't have known that, right? I wouldn't have known. Like, I know way more about using WordPress and building websites and things like that now because of some decisions I made along that route, right? I've figured out what the people that I like working with, how they act and what some of the values are there, right? So when we have that, right, that shame, it can prevent us from, again, making another investment in ourselves. Oh, I just can't do that, right? I have to stop spending all money, right? And so the problem becomes is that when we stop investing in ourselves, then we're really going to struggle. Then we put ourselves underneath a rock and we can't dig out from that. So we have to look at that. Okay, how about this one? Regret of not valuing our time, right? And how often, and again, I could be alone, maybe I'm not, but for you guys out there, how often have you looked back on a day and gotten, oh man, what a waste, right? I just wasted time, right? And sometimes we, even the working on our business, we look back, right? Like I spent a good bit of time. I had a project on my list yesterday that was a project that needed to get done. I got that project done, and then that led me into something else. Now, did I have to finish that project yesterday? No, but it felt important, right? And so but how far did I need to go with it, right? How much is my time worth to me? And so when we have that regret of not valuing our time, we might end up being overcommitted. We might end up trying to over multitask, right? Which the reality is we just task switch. And so we never get into any focus and flow. And that can at times lead to burnout. And again, back to lower quality decisions or not giving enough time to the decisions we need to make. And so again, this list could go on and on. You could have regret of past mistakes, fear of criticism, fear of rejection, shame of imperfection, fear of competition, insert, right? And what is the major theme in your story that is holding you back? Because here's the deal. All of these things, and the reason why I wanted to spend so much time really digging in and getting specific about that stuff is that all of these things, when left unchecked, right, it becomes your self-fulfilling prophecy. And therefore, we have to figure out how to rewrite those stories. But we can't rewrite the story if we don't dig into the yucky part, dig into the part that we don't want to go back into, right? So from there, right, we need to make different choices and work from a place of just letting fear, shame, and regret in, and then letting it go, right? Just saying, hey, thank you for those reminders, but that's not serving me right now. I'm ready to do more and be more. And I understand that can be easier said than done. And the beautiful part about all things that lead us to success is, as you've probably heard me say before, the process is very simple. It's that execution side that can at times take courage, faith, and guts, right? Really, right? To just confront fear, shame, and regret and go, okay, thank you, and move on and rewrite your story, right? That can take a leap of faith, right? That can take some courageousness to overcome some things that have been embedded in us for years. That can take some guts to just say, you know what? I no longer want to live in this story, right? So just take a moment and ask yourself this. What is my story based on fear, shame, or regret, right? What's the common theme there? Right. And let's go back to the beginning and what we did there and visualized. And I'd like you to just close your eyes one more time for me here. And as you're visualizing one more time here, I want you to look to your future. Where are you going to be 3 months from now, 6 months from now, a year from now, 5 years from now, wherever you feel comfortable kind of looking ahead to, look into the future. But I only want you to look at that vision through the lens of not having any fear, shame, or regret, right? And don't worry about how you don't have that. Just believe, right? We said it takes some courage, faith, and guts. Just believe you can let those go and look at that version of yourself without any fear, shame, or regret. What's different about your story? Right, what's the common theme again that's different this time than the previous story? Right? Okay, so from that, Kylene says, such a powerful realization to be authentic with ourselves, be honest and brave, and give ourselves grace as we dive deep into the uncomfortable so we can get to where we want to be. I love that, Kylene. Thank you for sharing that. All right. So I appreciate anybody here that was willing to play full out and believe that version is there and understanding that that's the first step, right? And that's the cool part is, again, these things are very simple. They're just not always easy to execute, right? But the very simple step of just being willing to play full out, being willing to try to have those, whether or not you were able to really see anything clearly or feel anything different yet, that's that first step, right? Because the more we do that, the better we're going to get. And I love this little saying from T. Harv Eckert. And if you don't know who T. Harv Eckert is, that's okay. He's an author, and he's got a pretty popular book out there called The Secret of the Millionaire Mind. And I think it's The Secret of the Millionaire's Mind, something along those lines. I think I've got that about right. But he says this, he says, I'd rather be really hokey and really rich than be really cool and really broke. Right. And so it's that hokiness of saying, okay, I'm going to play full out. I'm going to visualize something. I'm going to try to have an uncommon mindset. I'm going to think differently. right? And here's my belief, and he even kind of explained this a little bit more around this, and throughout the course of his book. But my belief that the really rich part is not just financially, but in all aspects, including really rich in a fulfilling business, right? So all of your areas you feel rich in, right? You're a scale of 1 to 10, you're a 10 in all areas of your life, because you've been willing to be, you know what? Oh, somebody's gonna, because that goes back to the fear or the shame or the regret. Oh, somebody's gonna look at me and tell me that I'm hokey because I'm visualizing, because I'm, meditating, because I'm praying, because I'm whatever it is for you, right? So from that place, we do need some practical ways to rewrite our story. And so I'm going to leave you guys with this here today. We've got a bit yet, but this will be become somewhat of the closing here. I want to give you guys 3 ways that you can implement starting to rewrite your story, or not really starting to implement rewriting your story. And the number one way that we need to take and kind of practically move ourselves forward here is we have to identify those limiting beliefs, right? And we've done some of that so far. If you've played along and you did the visualization and you thought about those things, you've really already started identifying those things, right? I asked you what was the common theme in those stories when fear, shame, and regret was around. And then also you had an opportunity to look at what maybe that was like without it. And once you find the absence of what's there, you're starting to identify those limiting beliefs. And because our limiting beliefs, they make up the core of our story, right? It's a reference point for us to make decisions from based on past experiences. And so just like our preferences and tastes, they were all created by situations and experience that we had in the past. We like certain foods because of the memory of when we were having those foods, right? We stay away from certain situations because of the memories we had of those past situations, right? We believe that if I do this, then this will happen, right? Because our brains function in a very interesting way compared to any other mammal, compared to almost any other being on this planet, is that we ultimately, again, we won't get deep into the brain science. I'm not a brain scientist, so I don't want to get too crazy here, but we're just going to say we've got 2 brains. We actually have 3, but we've got 2 brains. We've got our conscious brain, which is where we draw, situations in front of us. Conscious brain goes back into the memory banks and goes through the card catalog and says, okay, linear look at things. If this happens, then this is going to happen. That's how we make order out of the world. That's how we can do all these things. But our subconscious brain, it doesn't operate like that, right? It's the one that's, I'm able to talk, I'm able to read, I'm able to look at the camera, I'm able to, breathe all at the same time without thinking about it, right? And so we've installed these beliefs and of what we can and cannot do based on the perceived past experiences that we then say are evidence of what we're capable of, right? Every place where we feel stuck, we have to dig deep into it and find a root. Because what happens is that experience takes place. Maybe it's a similar experience to something that we've had happen in the past, and we continuously create that same experience through the limiting beliefs, going back to what I mentioned earlier, and we make it a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? But we never go back to the belief and ask why. Why is that my belief? Why is that, right? Like I talked about my son a little bit earlier, and even to this day, he's still very good at it. And so I'm super proud of him because I have not beat it out of him yet. And not physically beat him, but, kept telling him to stop asking why. Right. And I'm a parent like every other parent, right? You get to that point where you're like, I just can't answer another question right now. Right. I've reached my limit. And so we say, stop asking why. Right. But the reality is we have to keep asking why. Right. And so I'm going to focus on that, right? Find a way to do a better job of just going, yep. And instead of, maybe I just need to say, I don't know why, buddy, but why don't you figure that out? I'm here to help you. Right. Because we need to keep asking why why is that really true, right? Could there be a different outcome that I could create this time? Because the answer is always yes, right? There's always a way to have a different outcome. It might just take more time than just making a different decision right now today, right? But if I continue to make a different decision over and over and over again, I will ultimately create that outcome that I want. And so we have to replace that belief with a more empowering one, right? Now, some of you guys that are tuned in here may have joined Kylene and I when we used to do that Unlock Your Potential workshop. That's something that we've sunset for right now. And at some point, I believe Kylene's going to bring that back. But if you were somebody who did that, you still have access to a meditation and an exercise that allows you to have a framework to go into those limiting beliefs and find it, right? And some people, that's a great start. For some people, maybe it's rooted a little bit deeper. We've got limiting beliefs that are rooted so deep down in there that we don't even know that they're there, right? We've hid them so deeply inside that we can't quite even put our fingers on them. And a lot of times that requires working with somebody like my wife, Kylene. And she's got a program that she's building that will be available at some point in the not too distant future, I hope, which she calls a breakthrough session, right? And she utilizes her certificate, see, tongue-tied, her certification. She's been certified in a program called Regenerating Images and Memory. And she's really good at this. People have had some incredible breakthroughs when she's worked through this with them. So, but ultimately here, though, the process of rewriting your story is really just to identify the root of your limiting belief, ask why, and then replace it with a more empowering story, right? And there's lots of ways that you can do that. At the end of the day, just reach out to myself, reach out to Kylene. You can find me over at consultaaron.com, and I can put you in touch with Kylene or however that works, right? However you guys want to reach out to us, and we can help with those limiting beliefs. So that's number one, the limiting beliefs. Number two here is we need to embrace failure, right? And failure is one of those things that really trips people up, right? Everything that doesn't work out, we love to label it as a failure, and then we shun the experience as something we want nothing to do with ever again. I'm never going to fail again, and that's never going to happen to me again, right? In fact, especially in the United States here, failure is identified as the opposite of winning, right? If you're not first, you're last is a line from a a movie. I can't remember the Ricky Bobby one. I can't remember what the name of that movie was exactly, but it was a joke. It was tongue in cheek, but honestly, that's the way our society works, right? If you're not first, you're last. And so we have this label, and then we use it to, do things like, oh, I just got to grind right harder. The failure happened because I didn't hustle enough. That's the current story. But failure is the only way to solve a challenge, right? If you think about science, for example, right? Science is just failing as often as possible without a catastrophic event, hopefully, right? Not always, to understand how something works, right? It's documented failure after failure to understand how something works. In fact, if you think of one of America's most prolific inventors, I think a lot of people would come up with the name Thomas Edison. Yes, there are others and whatever, but Thomas Edison was probably one of America's most noted failures, right? That's how his process worked, right? He said about the invention of the light bulb, he says, "I've not failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that it won't work," right? So he didn't invent the light bulb by being super smart and just going, "Oh, that's it. Yep, there it works," right? He invented the light bulb out of sheer willpower of being willing to try something 10,000 times that didn't work until the 10,001 time, right? And who knows if it was 10,000 or whatever, but that's the idea, right? So we need to change the story from being afraid of failing and instead break the steps down into small chunks so that failures are not catastrophic, right? We need to look at it scientifically, right? You need to rewrite your story from avoiding failure and instead strive to get more feedback through more action, right? So we need to drop that label of good or bad when it comes to failure. Like, oh, that's bad. Okay, go back to what we talked about before. Part of rewriting a story is just asking why, right? Why? Because if I just say that's bad, then I want to pack it away, have nothing to do with it ever again, and move on. But the reality was, in that action, there was value there. Whether or not, if it was what you would consider a massive failure, there's value to understand, well, why was that a failure? Why didn't that work? What could I do differently? Right? And so we need to let go of those labels and just embrace it for the feedback it provides, and the hindsight you're going to gain with a new perspective. Because oftentimes failures or things that didn't work out are put in front of you, not because of any particular learning experience in that moment, but as a way to show you, hey, you were on the wrong path. Right? I talk all the time about how we need to trust our gut instinct, our whatever, our intuition, or whatever that is. And I always say, if you think about it, 9 times out of 10, your intuition, your gut was right. But the reality, once you have hindsight to look back on things, that 10th time that you thought was this absolute failure that made you stop trusting your gut is actually just telling you, hey, you're on the wrong path. Hey, there's something better for you. Right? And so we need to drop that label. And the practical application of this is very simple. When faced with a failure, as quickly as possible, drop the fear, drop the shame, drop the regret, and look for what the experience is really telling you about the direction of your next action. All right. So that's number 2. Number 3 is we need to practice mindfulness and self-compassion. Now, this one was a struggle for me at first, and still I have to be very intentional about this, right? First and foremost, my story is that I am a chaser of squirrels, right? Shiny object, right? And so I have to be very intentional about this. But the idea here is that we need to slow down to speed up, right? We need to do some of the working on our business more often, and on ourselves, and on asking more questions before we just dive into things. And that might seem counterintuitive to what I just discussed with embracing failure and just doing, right? Taking the feedback, find that 10,000 ways that it won't work. But it's a balancing act. It really does become a balancing act. And when it's really fear, shame, or regret writing the story. So this practical step here is to try to remove the judgment from the action, right? If we don't slow down, we're only going to be able to kind of use that linear brain, that card catalog of going back to past experiences, and I'm just trying to go as quickly as I can. But when I slow down a little bit and I start trusting in myself, and I start kind of being more intentional, being mindful, right? It helps us make it easier to identify the triggers and be proactive about addressing them, right? Seeing them coming and thanking your brain for going, yep, okay, thank you for that reminder that, last time this was a little bit dangerous. This didn't go exactly the way I thought about. And just going, okay, thank you. But then assuring yourself, hey, we got this though, right? Having that self-compassion allows us to better embrace failure. When you experience fear or shame due to past decisions, remind yourself that it's part of being a human, right? And that allowing ourselves the grace, right? You may hear people say that from time. Just give yourself grace. And that's important, right? That's that self-compassion that allows us to better embrace failure, and then let go of the fear, the shame, and the regret, right? And finally, the mindfulness and self-compassion allows us to set more realistic expectations so that we can develop more self-confidence, right? Our lack of self-confidence comes from years of overcommitting and then letting ourselves down, right? Understand that you will not always make the perfect decision, and that's okay, right? And this last one here, it's going to look very different for everybody, right? For different people. For some, it's just to make it a non-negotiable activity that you have 30 minutes of quiet time for yourself when you're drinking your morning coffee, right? And maybe that's good enough for you, and you're a little bit better with the mindfulness and being intentional and being able to let things come in and out, and you just need to protect that space. For others, it might be to have some time in prayer, right? Maybe that's what fills you up and allows you to see things more clearly, right? It could be a guided meditation practice. I know many have experienced this same mindfulness and self-compassion by being a part of Kylene's Rise, Shine, Smile yoga experience, right? For me, I personally love to Zentangle because I found that act of Zentangling will help control that squirrel brain attention story that I've got. And it allows my subconscious brain to have the control, and it lets me get deeper into thoughts, right? So ultimately for you, it's going to be finding the right formula, but really committing to making this part of your daily business practice is to have a little mindfulness and a little self-compassion and really work on that intentionally. As I said, for me, it's Zentangling to have that distraction. And then I also have a meditation, or I have several meditations I'd like to go through, and a guided prayer, right? So I'm touching as many bases as I can for me. And I found that combination for me works the best. And also, in any time that I find some movement in there, I can bring myself a lot more mindfulness and self-compassion. Right? So finding what that is for you is really important. But here's the great part. Again, as I mentioned, this is very simple at its core. It just takes you committing to it and using these 3 simple methods to rewrite your story. But ultimately, here's the great part. Ultimately, you can use these 3 simple methods. You can figure out what works for you. You take some combination of these things, mix them all together, back to the mindfulness, find what works for you. Ultimately, this comes down to your choice, right? You can choose to keep doing the same thing over and over again and expect a different result, or you can choose to write a new story for yourself through the choices that you make, right? So to hopefully help solidify this idea and kind of give you a better understanding, I want to talk about Small Business Saturdays here and see how, if maybe you can see yourself in a story like this, right? So all of this, okay, so we're going to talk about Small Business Saturday. I started doing Small Business Saturdays in August of 2018, right? And so I didn't feel, I love all the people that show up here, but the numbers are about the same. We get the same people here. Love it, love it, love it. I want to be able to support those people as much as I can. But I started thinking about this whole concept of the world without any fear, shame, or regret. And as I was visualizing my world, it started bringing up some questions for me, right? I got into those. Well, why? Why am I doing this? Right? Why this? Why that? Right? And it got me thinking about how I was spending my time and what was working and what was not getting me closer to my goals and fulfilling what I was put on this earth to do. So I started asking, what was coming out of fear, shame, or regret? And I had to get over the ego of the fact that I'd been putting out Small Business Saturdays episodes fairly regularly since I mentioned August of 2018. I had to let go of the fear of failure, right? If I stop doing Small Business Saturdays, I'm going to be a failure, and all that fear showed up, right? Or maybe it's the regret of missed opportunities. Oh, well, what if the one episode just really changed somebody's life or something along those lines, right? Or the shame of financial struggle. Talked about that already. The regret of not valuing my time. If I'm not doing enough, right? Am I doing enough? That kind of thing. The shame of seeking help, right? I Small Business Saturday is something I've done on my own for the most part. I've had some interviews here and there, but for the most part, it's been on me. Right. So then it was time to start rewriting that story. Right. I had to identify what the limiting beliefs were. And the belief was that it was part of who I was. And without it, I was not fulfilling my purpose. I had to embrace the failures. Right. I've been doing this since August of 2018. And that means that about 213 episodes of this program. And I feel like internally that I've tried everything from doing it at different times, sharing in different locations, focusing more on nuts and bolts, more on mindset, all sorts of different things that I've tried. And it never really felt like an ultimate success, right? It never really felt like it was getting beyond the core group here, right? And as we start talking about it, we start losing people watching, right? So there's those fears of failure showing up, right? Nobody's watching anymore. And so I'm proud of it. Absolutely. Heck yeah. But what was moving the needle? And I had hoped that with growth and new followers, we're going to be there. So what did I learn? Right. And so then I had to practice some mindfulness and self-compassion. And it took me thinking about it in a non-judgmental level. I had to let go of the ego, and I decided to rewrite the story. And I thought about this while I was untangling. And in the middle of the night after that, and after having a conversation with my wife that day, I decided that it was time to sunset Small Business Saturdays. Now, here's the part that might shock people, as I know it was really interesting to me, that it wasn't until I made that decision and started rewriting the story did I realize that there was something better. Now, and I'll talk a little bit more about this in just a second, but now I was getting to a point where I could keep fulfilling my mission by sharing what I believe are crucial foundations that every small business needs. But now I also get to do it with like-minded people. I also get to support my wife's mission too, which is very similar. And I believe that this new incarnation is going to be better for all the listeners. And it's going to be a new format that I think will be a little bit more bite-sized for everybody. So this will be the final episode of Small Business Saturday in this current format. In fact, it won't be called Small Business Saturday anymore. It's going to be called OSG Live. And it's going to be a combination of this, of Thankful Thursday, and we're going to have some other awesome collaborators. So let me know what questions you guys have, those that are still tuned in live here. Let me know if there's some questions here. And I'm like super excited about this, and I think it's really cool. In fact, you could say it's ice cold, but yeah, well, that's kind of an inside joke that I can't share quite yet, but stay tuned. But and details are still kind of being finalized, and so we don't have anything specific that I can tell you yet. But what I want you guys to do is I want you guys to look for a new program called OSG Live happening in late September. And then there will be a new podcast coming in the months after that as well. And the idea of trying to break that into small bits and easily consumable bites that are going to help you build a business that you love. So what I'd ask you to do right now is, if you have not already, if you're somebody that maybe has listened on Facebook for the most part, and you're not really somebody, if you have not subscribed to our YouTube channel is what I'm trying to say. So if you go over to, in fact, let me see if I can make that a little bit better so you can actually click on it. I don't think you can actually click on the one that I just put in there. But if you go to liveosg.com and just make sure that you're subscribed there. Yeah, all right. Make sure you're subscribed to that YouTube channel, because that's where the action's going to be happening. Yes, we'll be sharing it, sharing where it is. But I think we're going to move everything and just have it all on YouTube there at Live OSG. And so if you are subscribed to the YouTube channel, if you'll just put that in the comments right now for me. But if not, head over there. Make sure you subscribe at Live OSG. And if you could also do me a favor, if these 213 episodes of Small Business Saturdays, if anything has helped you at all, if you've gotten anything out of it, would you do me a huge favor and just share liveosg.com with your community, with your groups, with your social media accounts? Just say, hey, subscribe to this, look for something cool coming up, or whatever. Just say, hey, I just subscribed, or I've been subscribed to liveosg.com, and there's some good information over there, right? Whatever it is, just do me that favor and share it with your friends. And that is where you will be soon finding OSG Live. So that is what I have for you all today. Hopefully that was helpful. Hopefully that gave you a framework to rewrite your story, right? Getting rid of the fear, shame, and regret. Just saying, okay, yeah, thank you. And being able to, look at your world without those things and then rewrite that story from that place. All right. So hopefully that was very helpful for you guys today. Let me know if you have any questions. Let me know if you have any comments. I'm going to go ahead and sign off here. And I think my kiddo has already made it on the bus, so I will catch up with him later today. But I appreciate you guys spending some time with me here on this Wednesday morning. Oh, by the way, I intentionally did this Wednesday morning slot because Wednesday is most likely where OSG Live is going to live now. All right. And I don't know exactly the time, but this felt like the right time. So hopefully we will see you guys again soon. It's going to be later on. So no more SBS or anything like that for a couple weeks here, but I will continue to look forward to hearing from you guys. Comments, questions. If you'll go to consultaaron.com, that's how you can reach out directly to me. All right. So everybody have a great rest of your Wednesday here for a Small Business Saturdays, not on a Saturday. All right. Have a great day, everybody.